Greetings. Welcome to the DragonCon Urban Fantasy Track author interview series. I am joined today by the wonderful Charlaine Harris, and I am so grateful that you are here with us, Charlaine. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome.
And we hope we'll get to see you in person again one of these days. But for right now, this will be a nice substitute. And the first question that I always ask everyone that I interview for this series is, did you read any fantasy and sci-fi as a child or a young adult?
I did. I read Ray Bradbury, a little Robert Heinlein. Yes, I did. And it made a big impression on me.
Right. Okay. Those are good places to start too.
Yes. Yes.
Good way to get to dive in. Now, something that a lot of your fans may know this, but some of them may not, is that you did begin and have in fact continued to be a mystery writer.
Uh-huh.
And right here, I have a copy of your very first book.
You do? Oh my gosh. That was a long time ago, Carol.
Yes, 1981 or something, I believe.
Yep.
Yes. And that, and then you, after writing that, and I think there was one more, A Secret Rage. You then okay. And then you started with your Aurora Teagarden series.
Yep.
The first one there. And I think that that's a pretty cool cover. And what can you tell people for someone who is unfamiliar with Aurora? What can you tell them about that series? Kind of what's your elevator pitch on that one?
Oh, librarian comes into her own.
Yes. And now you did write a couple more installments in that series in the past few years, correct?
I did. I just felt like visiting Aurora again. And the TV adaptation was really, really popular and still is, I think. So I just wanted to see what Aurora was doing. But after she had a baby, I thought I just can't responsibly write a woman carrying around a small baby trying to solve crimes. So I think it's time for Aurora to retire, though I'm sure she's still having adventures.
She probably is, yes. And maybe she'll just have to come back after her kids are, teenagers or off to college or something.
Oh, maybe she will.
Yeah, you can do some kind of a time jump there. Now, your next foray into to mystery, or the non-paranormal sort, was the Lily Bard series. Very different.
Very different.
Yes, and I must say I very much enjoyed this one, and I'm looking forward to getting a hold of the second one.
Oh, thank you. That series is really dear to my heart.
And what can you tell us about that one? About that series?
It's about a rape survivor who is trying to remain anonymous in a small town. She takes a job as a maid for several different families, but she's always finding out things about those families that she would rather not know. And unfortunately for her, she runs across a body every now and then, but she is well able to defend herself.
Yes, she is. Tough lady. Yeah. And I've got to say that first installment did have me guessing. I mean, I thought, okay, all the way to the end. So,
oh, yay.
Yeah. And I always appreciate that about a mystery. I don't want to figure it out before the protagonist does. So
me either, Carol, me either. I always feel a little cheated if I can figure it out, because I love to be baffled up until the last minute.
Yes, exactly. Now, after that series, you kind of decided you were going to add in some speculative, shall we say, or supernatural elements. And here we have Sookie in the
Yeah.
first book in Dead Until Dark, which I love these covers. They're
Oh,
amazing.
yeah.
And my shelf with all your books on it is downstairs. So the only one of the ones from this series that I brought upstairs was this one. But it's very representative of what the others look like. And can you tell us a little bit about how, or how you kind of made this move within your mind that you wanted to start doing things with supernatural elements, or did it just kind of come to you that way?
No, I really wanted to do something that I had not done before. As you can see, I jump around quite a bit with topic and tone in my books because I don't want to write the same book over and over. If you can have a successful career doing that, more power to you. But I just can't do that. And I really wanted to stop abiding by the mystery rules as they were then and write something that just was me all the way through and had a sense of humor, because the Lily Bard books, zero sense of humor, which was really hard for me to write. So, but I wanted to let all that loose, and I was tired of being mid-list, and I just wanted to do something that would break me through. But there wasn't urban fantasy then. There was none of this. So it took my agent 2 years to sell Dead Until Dark. And I think now it's in its 38th printing or something like that. It got turned down over and over and over and over. So eventually it found a home where Laurel K. Hamilton was being published.
Okay.
So, and that really made sense. And that really started my phase 2 of my career, I guess.
Well, there you go. We're very glad that happened, because it would have been, your life would have been different, and so would all of ours, from not having had Sookie.
Well, that's a lovely way to put it. But my life would certainly have been very different.
Yeah. Now, in the midst of while you were writing about Sookie, you also decided to add in something slightly different, sort of similar in that it had speculative elements, but we've got the Harper Connelly series, and this is the first book in that series. And so can you tell us a little bit about, give us the background on this one, and for anybody who's maybe not read them, what's your little elevator pitch on that one?
Lightning strikes survivor detects bones.
There you go. Yes.
I got really interested in people who've survived lightning strikes. There aren't that many. I mean, usually it kills you. And if you're in Florida, you have a much higher chance of being struck by lightning than anywhere else, though she wasn't in Florida. But a lot of people who have been struck by lightning and survived it have a really grab bag of unusual symptoms or problems after that. And they let me listen in on their listserv without posting, of course. And it was just fascinating. So I decided she had gotten a strange power from being struck by lightning. And it was the fact that when she touched the bones of a deceased person, she could see the moment of their death. And of course, it's a valuable trait to have. She and her stepbrother market it into a way to make a living.
Yes, and she's a very, very different character from Sookie too. I mean, and as you pointed out, all of your characters are different from one another. But it was very interesting that the fact that you did write. I'm guessing you must have been writing a couple. I mean, there are 4 books in that series, correct? In the Harper Connelly, and you were writing them during the same time that you were writing Sookie. Did you finish one before you started the other, or did you have both going at the same time?
Oh, I'm so linear. I have to finish a book, then start another book. I just can't do 2 at one time. So for those 4 years, I wrote 2 books a year and hated it. I hated it. I mean, I loved the books, but I hated trying to, expend that much energy and time in a year. I'm just a slower writer naturally. And that just finally I thought, well, something's got to give, and it's got to be the Harper books because Sookie is making more money.
Right. And had worldwide fame at that point in time, right? So yes, I can see where that would be true. I've heard people say that that I've gotten both answers from different authors, those who have written, have things coming out around the same time. So I was curious how that worked out for you. Now, something else you did, and I don't have a hard copy of it, mine is digital, but after you were after the Sookie series was completed, you did a graphic novels with a series, a short one with Christopher Golden called Cemetery Girl. And what can you tell us about that?
Well, Chris was mighty patient with me. Of course, he can write anything, and he's very familiar with the graphic novel field, and he's just an incredible human being. But I sensed he was getting a little tense there because it took me a while to catch on. Writing graphic novels is completely different than writing regular novels, and Chris was kind enough to lead me through it, and I eventually got it, and I enjoyed the process, but it didn't intrigue me enough to make me say, oh yes, I want to do lots of those.
Right. It wasn't as though you wanted to, keep pursuing that, but I'm sure, a good experience for you to have.
It was. I think, the more you learn, the better, though now that I'm in my 70s, I'm getting a little more resistant to that.
Right. No, I can understand. Now, what can you tell people? What's the basic synopsis of that series, of what it's about?
Okay. Girl with amnesia wakes up in cemetery.
Hence the name, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yes, well, that was very, very interesting. Even the first few frames, it's like, I think I was dead. So, yeah, that was good. Now, after we will go back to Sookie in more depth, but I'm just kind of trying to go through the line here, more or less chronologically. And after you were done with the Sookie series, something else you did was the Midnight Texas series. And this is the second book, which I couldn't find. The copy of the first one is hiding from me somewhere, but this one was easily found. So yes, and that was a trilogy, and also another one of your series that was made into a television show. But what can you tell people about that Midnight Texas series?
Ooh, well, it's about a very small, very close group of people who live in the same dilapidated small town at a very significant crossroads in Texas, and they all have a very colorful past, and they are ready to protect their turf at all costs. And it was just so I got to revisit someone from every series I had ever written, which was really fun. Someone from every single series is in those books. So it was great fun to write and to revisit some old friends and make some new ones.
Oh, yes. And it's such an intriguing idea and concept too. I remember when I read the first book, there was this moment where one person has to be gotten rid of, let's put it that way, near the end of the book, and it happened so fast. I was like, oh my god. It was pretty shocking. So
yes.
And I mean, I'm sure that's what you were going for, but it really, really worked, because I remember sitting there reading it and saying, did I just read that? I mean, because there was no, you didn't spend a long time going through the whole thing. It just happened. And I think that makes it more effective, actually. And I always appreciate that when you know, the the moments like that jump out at you and can be very shocking when they're things that you don't exactly expect. So anyway, I very much enjoyed that series as well, and I, you know, think that it was fun to have something like that after Sookie. Let's put it that way. So
It was.
yeah. Now the one of the next things that you did or that came out around the or came out after that was or around the same time, I guess, was this Indigo, which is a collaboration with a number of other people, something like 19 of you, I believe. And this is, all of these are names that anyone familiar with either urban fantasy or horror, or in some cases, mystery, suspense, whatever, that they would be familiar with those names. So what can you tell us about that? How did that collaboration come about and how did it work?
Oh, let me try to remember. It wasn't the first one I'd done, but it was Christopher's in that, and he was
Yeah.
one of the organizers, if I'm remembering correctly. And they assigned me a chapter, and I was really proud of the chapter I produced, but to fit in with the timeline that the other writers had established, it had to be changed extensively. So it was a mixed experience for me.
I would imagine that would be really difficult. It's not the same as writing with just one co-author. I mean, when you've got 18 other people, and I was curious if that's how it worked, was that everybody had basically a chapter. Or I think there were 10 of you. There were 19 chapters, and there was something like 10 of you, maybe. And then, so I was curious, well, how did they work that out? Because I've heard, again, that collaborations can work somewhat differently between different people. So I was curious how that worked out. Now the next thing that you have been you did work on and that you came out with and that you are still working on, thankfully, is the Gunnie Rose series, and this is the first one, An Easy Death, which I'm covering up with my. So that is something we will talk about that in a little more depth also. But if there's someone who's watching this who has never heard of that or hasn't read it, I'm sure they've heard of it, but if they haven't read that series, what is your elevator pitch for that one?
Ooh. Female gunslinger meets magic in the 1930s.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yes, and it's a fascinating series, and I won't. I'm going to wait just a minute to do that, but I would probably at this point we'll focus a little more on between the Sookie, which was of course your really long and your urban fantasy series, and also the Gunnie Rose series, since that's your current one, which I also very much enjoy. So what I did want to ask you about is, have you got any favorite secondary or recurring characters from either of those series or any of your series that have been your favorites to write, that you've really enjoyed that?
Oh, sure. Pam in the Sookie books was one of my favorite characters because she's just unapologetically who she is.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed that. She just has no moral compass. I mean, she just doesn't. She's loyal to her maker and she'll do whatever he says. And she loves being a vampire. She is all in. And I really enjoy writing that. In the Gunnie Rose books, probably Felix, because he's such a jerk.
Oh, yeah.
He's really a jerk. He's really unpopular, and he's in love with the wrong guy. At least from Lisbeth's point of view, he is. So I really enjoy writing Felix. It's nice to write someone who doesn't even really try to be nice.
Right. That if there's no such thing as letting something slip, he just doesn't care.
He doesn't care.
He's not sorry about it afterwards. And I think it's cool with Pam, the way there's such a juxtaposition between the way she looks, her outward appearance, and what she's like, the kinds of clothes she likes to wear, and
Yes.
how she's very, she looks almost as though she's the suburban lady next door, and which I guess in some ways she probably was, but not the kind of lady that they would think of when they saw her.
Yeah.
So those are both fun characters to read about too. So thank you for putting those two together.
Sure.
Now, what about antagonists? I don't want to say necessarily villains, but have you had any favorite antagonists that you particularly enjoyed?
Ooh.
Or that you found, I guess, maybe, rewarding to write?
Well, the Fae in the Sookie series, the couple that are actually Fae cannibals, they were just so awful. When I thought about them, I thought, oh, I can't do that. It's too bad. But every time I think that, I go ahead and do it.
You have to push yourself, right?
Yes, I think you really ought to. I mean, if you think, oh, that's too bad, go do it. Go do it. There have been several times I've thought, oh, I just can't do that to my protagonist. And that's a sure signal you ought to.
Right.
Because bad things happen to even really good protagonists. So the Fae were fun to write. And, Gunnie Rose has a variety of antagonists, but I think probably her husband's father is the worst person because he's ruined the family.
Mm.
They have very little future as they know it at court because of his treacherous ways. And I think it really was satisfying when he died.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. It was like nobody was shedding any tears over that, were they?
Oh, and isn't that sad? Everybody was pretty glad he was gone.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, nobody's mourning you. Bye.
Yeah.
Now, what would you say are the major differences between the characters of Sookie and Lisbeth, and how do you think that they are most alike?
Ooh. Well, I don't write weak women, but strong women can be strong in different ways. Lisbeth Rose is not nearly as emotional as Sookie. She's very practical. She's very down to earth, and she's very, very good at what she does. Sookie doesn't have a main talent like Lisbeth does. She has a main problem, which is
Yes.
which is the fact that she can read people's minds. But that's not actually a talent, I think. But they're both brave women. Lisbeth because she doesn't know how to be anything else, and Sookie because she has to be to live her life. She has to be brave.
Right. And I noticed that, in the beginning of the series, Sookie refers to her, her condition or her ability as a disability.
Yes.
And that, it's kind of a combination, I think, of how she's come to view it and how other people have treated her because of it. And, even though at some point they kind of do get used to it, it seems as though there's still some resistance to, to actually accepting her for the way that she is. But then it seems to be, I guess she's just too busy to think of it that way. But then in one of the last couple of books, it struck me that she referred to this again as a disability, that was how she thought of it. And I thought that was kind of interesting, that it kind of came back around. But at that point, I guess things were kind of falling apart for her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just thought that was, before that, she was too busy trying to stay alive, and trying to navigate these different worlds, within context of her own world.
Yes.
And one of the things I had planned to ask you, and then I came across a question that kind of answered that for me, was that how long I know that you had planned very early on how you wanted the story to end, or at least, how Sookie's part of the story of the series was going to end. But one of the things I was curious about was how far in advance did you say, okay, it's going to be time, I need to wrap this up. So I'm going to have to start thinking this way. And I believe that the quote from you that I saw said something about, it was a couple of books from the end. Is that correct?
Because I knew it was going to take a long time to wind it up. And I just felt like the story had almost been told. If I'd kept going past that point, I would have been floundering, because I was ready for her to find her happy place. And I was ready to draw things to a close. And I think that's a clear sign that you should. So after I wrote 2 books from the end, from the last book, I thought, okay, this is it. And unfortunately, I said that out loud in public before I told my publisher. So I know that was wrong and bad, but I'll tell you the reason behind it. I thought they would try to persuade me to go on. Now, that may have been unfair, but I thought, oh, what if they say, oh, you're not going to be making X amount of dollars anymore if you quit writing those, and which was absolutely true. But I think, and of course, I love money as much as anybody else.
Right. Yeah.
But
you all need to eat. Yeah.
I think to enjoy what you're doing is really, really important. And I'd gotten to the point where I wasn't as gleeful about approaching each book. So I knew it was time to do that. So I said it out loud before I could talk myself out of it, or anybody else could talk me out of it.
Oh, there you go. Well, and I think that's something that becomes apparent as a reader. We can often pick up on that too. The fact that, okay, well, maybe I'm not, as you put it, quite as gleeful about, about not that the stories wouldn't be any good, but that you might feel as though there was some kind of spark missing, perhaps, if you had kept going when you weren't feeling it. And I think that's something, that people can pick up on. And certainly if you're feeling that way, it's definitely time to, make a change. And I will say that one of the things that I always enjoyed most about Sookie was her voice. And just, it was like, okay, when I was reading Sookie, and then if I went to read something else, and I was like, well, I need to be back where I can hear Sookie again, where I can do that. And, she was just so unique. And I think not just at the time, but I think she's still unique, amongst, which is saying something considering how much urban fantasy is out there now. So I know that some people, probably are sorry that you ended it, but at the same time, you got to end it the way you wanted and gave her the life you wanted her to have. So
I did. It was wildly unpopular at the time. I'm sure perhaps you don't know this, but the end of the book got leaked from somebody in Germany. And it was before the book even came out. So I got a huge backwash of hatred, which was very unpleasant and stymied me for a while. And I think I got over it and I don't think about it, but I seem to bring it up quite a bit. So it made a huge negative impression on me, and was really probably one of the worst times of my life.
Oh my. I had not heard about the leak, or if I did, I have completely forgotten.
See, I wish I could, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that happens is that, and I think it's more difficult now since people are able to pretty much say or do anything that they want to online.
Yep.
And I think it doesn't matter what they say or do. But, as readers, we're part of the experience of your creation, but it's still your creation and it's your choice to do what you want with it. And, I could see people saying, well, I wish she'd ended up with somebody else, or something else had happened to such and such a character, but still I enjoyed all these books, and I'm happy that that the author at least got to do what she wanted. And to me, that seems like a rational response. If someone had hoped it would be somebody else or some different ending for her, but not to treat you that way. And you're
Some people just aren't rational. I found that.
I think they almost seem as I think some readers feel as though they have a lot more ownership of the character than you do. And that's a big mistake. I don't see, how or why people would get to that point. But I do wonder, one of the things when I had said that I miss Sookie's voice to now and again. I mean, it's not as though I would love to see her again at some point, but I'm perfectly happy with the way things are. Do you miss her voice?
I've moved on.
Yeah.
I loved Sookie and I enjoyed living with her, but I told her story. I've moved on to another story.
Right. So there we go, folks. Anybody watching this, we're good.
Yep.
Sookie's happy, and she's in her good, happy place. Now, I do have one question for you. Say when the series was out, lo those many years, if there was another urban fantasy series that she could have made a guest appearance in, which one do you think she would have had fun with?
Ooh. There are so many that are so good. So good. Golly. It would have been fun if she could have shown up in Ben Aronovich's series.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been a lot of fun. She would have liked Peter Grant a lot. And
as we all
would have
should.
liked her.
Yeah.
He's such the warmest character, such a good character. And I really like, there are several others I really like. Have you read Sarah Painter?
I am familiar with the name, but I have not. I think I know what series you're talking about. Okay.
I just love that series so much. And that would be fun if those two characters could meet. I thought about Laurel's series, not the fairy one, but the vampire one, which is still ongoing.
Right.
It's just amazing how she keeps coming up with new ideas for that series. I'm in awe. But I don't think Sookie and Anita Blake would have gotten along very well.
Yeah. They would have been standing apart looking at each other like, what?
Yeah, what? Exactly.
It might be kind of fun to see Sookie and Mercy Thompson palling around.
Oh, no, I think that would be a better, they would have a better chance of getting to be friends.
Right. And not at each other's throats, literally. Yes. Yeah, that would certainly work out better. Well, now let's move on to the Gunnie Rose series, which to me is fascinating. And, just the whole idea of how the country is completely different. It's very much alternate history, since you have taken, there's a completely different story for what's going on in the old United States at this point in time. And you have the country divided up into a number of different areas. And I want to see, I think there might be a map.
There's a map. I love doing maps.
I want to say there is one in this book, and I can't seem to. Oh, there we go. So I don't know if it's showing very well, but people can get an idea that it's divided up into different areas. And Gunnie Rose lives pretty much in what would have been the Southwest, or not necessarily the Southwest, but the Texas area. And different parts of the country have, very different characteristics. And she has to, try to make the best of the world that she lives in. And I've been curious because of the inclusion of, the most recent book, which that was the map I was holding up. But also, I love this cover so much. I can't even tell.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Yes, it really is. And that's the most recent book, A Serpent in Heaven, or The Serpent in Heaven. And what the fact that that deals more with some of the Russian, it takes place in the Russian section, which the Russian Cage did too, but this one is also told from the point of view of her half sister, correct? So she's, which was also an interesting way to do that. But I was curious about the fact that in Dead in the Family, in the Sookie series, we have a very unpleasant, and it wasn't really his fault, the Alexei who got turned. And I was wondering, was that part of the germ for when you wanted to use these Russians, or was that too long ago for that to be?
I've always been very interested in the last Russian royal family.
Oh, okay.
Some people go with the Kennedys. I go with the Russian royal family. And I really found their end so tragic and so dramatic and so sad that I've thought about it quite a bit. And I read a really good book about Rasputin that my friend Lee Perry, otherwise known as Tony Kellner, sent me for Christmas. And it was right on the money. And I was able to use a lot of the information in it. So, and Rasputin is such an interesting character too. Loathsome, but charismatic.
Yes.
So I really wanted to use that again. I wanted to treat it a different way. And I thought, what would happen to California? And I thought, maybe that's where the Russian royal family ended up after their long, long flotilla when they escaped, which of course they didn't. They all got executed. But, I wanted them to live a little longer and have a better ending. So I changed history. Since I was changing history, I felt at liberty to change it pretty drastically.
Exactly. And it works so well. I'm just saying the atmosphere, I think, all of it is just, so it feels realistic at the same time that we know it. Well, none of this happened, but it feels as though it could have. And so I encourage anyone who's watching this that maybe hasn't read any of the series yet to please give it a try, because I think it's wonderful. And I'm anxiously awaiting the next one, which comes out in September 5th.
September 5th. Yeah.
Actually, right after, I think the day after Dragon Con. So I think maybe I'll know what I'll be doing a few days after that. And, Lisbeth, and then you talked about Felix, but her world is so different in that the way you changed her world was you've got the magic, and the magic in the book or in the series is actually very interesting in how that works, because that plays a major role. Can you talk a little bit to that? Explain about the magic system in there that is kind of revealed a little bit as you go along?
Okay. Well, Rasputin kept Tsar Alexei alive by some means. His mother believed that anyway. So I have him being a kind of magician. And there were other Russian magicians from his line. And so when they end up in California, he establishes a school. I know that's not an original idea, a school for magical kids, but I think it's very, I think it's what would happen. So the Russian magical community are called Grigories for Grigory Rasputin. Now, there are other magical communities across the world, but they practice magic differently and they have different names. But they're all going to come together in the book I'm writing now. So,
Okay.
yeah, I planted some seeds there. So the Grigories they have they help guard the Tsar because, as we all know, Tsars are very prone to be assassinated. And they help practically the Earth Affinity Grigories help with engineering and so on. And the Air Grigories are stationed at the airport to help get planes in and out. And they have a variety of uses and purposes, some of them practical, some of them more destructive, like Felix, who is a very rare death Grigory. So I just thought that would be interesting. And when Lisbeth, who has is the product of a rape, is hired by two Grigories, and she doesn't like Grigory. She's never seen a full-fledged Grigory, and she doesn't like them when she does meet them. She gets hired to find a particular Grigory who has Rasputin's blood. He's from Rasputin's lineage, because Rasputin really did not mind where he scattered his seed. And so that's the initial, that's one of the openings for the first book. And that's her introduction to magic. So it's the reader's introduction to magic as well.
Yeah, and it's just there are the world is just so stark in so many ways that I think all of those elements become, what I mean by that is just the elements that when you are in a particular location where she gets to move around, Elizabeth does get to move around to some different places while she's out doing her work, essentially, that they're all significantly different from one another, but they have that realism in spite of this alternate history feel that I just can't say enough good about it. I think it's a wonderful series, and I do hope that anyone who hasn't checked them out yet will certainly do so.
Me too.
Now, so I'll ask you the same question that I did in regard to Sookie, is that if Lisbeth could make an appearance in another series, doesn't matter, in some other speculative series, where do you think she would fit in?
Oh, she and Anita Blake would get along great.
Oh yeah,
they're both shooters, so they would do really well together. Anybody else she might get along with? I'm not thinking of anybody right now. Lisbeth is very drastic, and she comes from a lawless era. She would have trouble fitting in to the world today, which is why I said it in an alternative history.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
she'd be in jail all the time now.
Yeah, she probably would, and given her background and the place where she lives and the world that she lives in, she does find it more difficult to trust people. But I could see that she and Anita could team up to go do a few things if they needed to. So yeah, definitely. Now, let me ask you this, and this may be unfair given the sheer oeuvre of your books over the years, the numbers. I mean, do you feel as though there's some kind of a common thread that runs through them?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do. The fact that many women are essentially very strong and they can get through whatever they have to get through.
Oh, okay. And that certainly fits. That certainly fits. It is just a good way to demonstrate from from in different ways from the different series that very same thing. So, okay. Now, if you had to pick a favorite of one of your books, say from a couple of different series, do you have a particular one that, like from the Sookie series, that you particularly enjoyed either the writing of or the finished product?
Ooh. Well, if I could remember the separate name of this one, it's the one where the hotel blows up with Eric in it, and she's got to get Eric out, Eric and Pam.
Right. Okay.
But I can't remember. After a while, I can't remember the specific
Right.
name of that one. I really enjoyed that one because I had to do a lot of research for it. I had to do some architectural research and some explosives research, and that was pretty interesting, trying to make that all credible. And also the final Harper Connelly, An Ice Cold Grave, because I had a really tragic event in there that, again, I was scared to write, but I thought, no, I have to do it because that's what would happen. I have to write it. So that was really, and that's probably the only serial killer I've ever had in any of my books either, because, they're pretty rare, but you could, I suppose, consider all vampires serial killers.
Right. Yeah. To a certain extent, for sure. Okay. Well, that, and I'm trying to remember the name of which book it was too, and I don't think the Sookie book. Yeah, and it wasn't Dead and Gone. I don't think, because I think that the blowing up happened right before. Maybe it was that one, or maybe it was From Dead to Worse. I don't know. But yeah, I can imagine that one, when it involved using some tactics that that you didn't use before, that all of that research would have been fun.
It
So
was.
now, what was there one of the books in any of your series that you particularly struggled with, that was just more difficult to get through for whatever reason?
I'm struggling now. I had COVID twice, and my brain is just not as quick or nimble as it used to be, and I can't write nearly as much per day. So every book is a struggle now, much more so than it ever was.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. That that's got to be difficult, and certainly
Yeah.
not something that you are used to either. Now,
I'm getting used to it.
right, yeah. But I mean, in the past, you weren't. So yeah,
Yeah.
the uh, you are always so nice about posting on your website about some of the things that you've been reading that you particularly enjoy, and so my guess is that your pleasure reading seems to be kind of eclectic, and you like reading different kinds of things.
Yes, very much. And I love recommending books I've enjoyed to other people. Who reads just one book a year? Nobody.
Right.
But I love to talk about books I've enjoyed. I don't ever talk about the books I really disliked or thought weren't up to par, because there's no point in doing that. We're all trying to make a living doing this, and it's subjective, so subjective.
Right. And I think it's great when I see authors promoting other authors and saying, hey, you should give this a try. This is, worth your time. And I think that speaks a lot to, how open you are and how willing you are to support other people publicly. So I think that's great. So kudos to you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. It's truly my pleasure.
And I know readers appreciate that, because it's like, okay, well, this is somebody whose books I enjoy. This is someone who I, respect as a human being, and they're telling me this is good. So you know what? I'm going to go give it a try. And I think that that is just as effective as word of mouth, that people, like you hear it from your friends or whatever. Now, kind of a craft based question, just because this also always interests me, is that do you prefer absolute quiet when you're writing, or do you like some kind of background sound?
Well, I don't listen to music when I write, but I do have the dog door is in my office.
Oh, okay.
So if you hear a clack, 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 that's the dog door.
Okay.
So I do have a little noise, but I don't listen. I'm just kind of boring. I don't listen to music. I don't listen to podcasts. I can't imagine trying to do that while I worked anyway. But yeah, I just like it quiet.
Right. I feel as though that's how I would do that too, because I get different answers from, any number of people. That I know some people like, some kind of instrumental music in the background, so that they're not paying attention to words, but that there is something going on. Now, I've never asked them how loud is it, but
Yeah.
but at the same time, I completely, I get the whole let's have the quiet. Not to mention the dog door could be. I'm sure that keeps you on your toes, right? You're not resting on your laurels too much at that point. Now, aside from the Gunnie Rose, which is coming out on September 5th,
Yep.
which is very exciting. And it's called "And All the Dead Shall Weep," right? That's the title
Yes.
of that one.
Yeah.
It is also a great title. I mean, that's
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
love that title.
I can't tell you how many titles of mine have been shot down, and probably rightly. But my last few books, I've thought of the title and they've gone with it, and that just really makes me so tickled.
Oh yeah, that's great. Well, and "The Serpent in Heaven," which I just put other books on top of, so I'm going to stick it out again. That's also a great title. But yeah, this cover is just this is just so fabulous to me. I think it's
It is.
amazing. And some of the other books 2 and 3 I have digital copies of, so I don't get to appreciate them so much. But this one I can look at anytime I want, and just enjoy it. So we've got the new Gunnie Rose coming out, and then you're working on the next one. Is that correct? I thought
I am. Yeah.
Well, that's great. It's nice to know that that the Gunnie will continue, and the element of mystery that all of your books contain, I think, probably goes towards your first beginning,
Yeah.
starting out that way, and that was, how you got your start. And I think that I really enjoy this series, and that I hope that anyone watching this who hasn't started it yet. I think I've said that a few times. Anyway, I really hope that they will pick this one up. And I like it because of the inclusion of magic and the alternate history, because you're kind of mixing your fantasy and your sci-fi there, and I think
Yeah.
that's amazing. And you do it so well. I mean, it comes out, as I said, completely believable. So
Thank you. Well, I've had a long time to practice.
you have, and we hope that you will continue to practice. So,
Thank you.
so thank you very much, Charlaine, for all of the wonderful books that you have brought to the world, and for being such a lovely lady in and of yourself. Even without being an author, I think you would be
Oh, well, thank
wonderful.
you, Carol.
You are quite welcome. And it's always a joy to talk to you. And I know the last time we saw each other in person, we were comparing grandchildren notes. So maybe in the future we will get a chance to do that again. And
be lovely. That would be nothing I'd rather talk about. I'm a boring grandmother.
yeah, there you go. Well, maybe we could do a separate interview just about that. Or see, that'll be our podcast. We'll start a podcast about
the grandma podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Two grandmas, and then we can have guests. I'm going off on a weird tangent, but hey, I think it sounds like fun.
It does to me too.
Yeah, even if it was just for us, but I do want to thank you so much. I want to thank our viewers, and remember, if you haven't read the Gunnie Rose series, please do. If you haven't read any of these, if all you've read is Sookie, you're missing another, some other great worlds out there. And I hope that people will, do that, to take forays into other things. And we didn't even touch on some of your short stories and things that you've written, for other publications. Like I was reading recently something out of Small Kingdoms, and I was like, well, that's different. For that, those appeared in Ellery Queen, is that correct?
Yep.
So there are many, many things out there for all of you to explore from the wonderful Charlaine. So please do so. Charlaine, we look forward to having you hopefully in person at Dragon Con again in the future. So thank you for joining us for this. And I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I can't say enough good about either your books or you. So thank you very, very much.
Well, Carol, thank you so much for entertaining me for an hour. I really enjoyed it.
Well, you are quite welcome. You are quite welcome. Thank you so much. And thanks to our viewers. We appreciate it. And remember the Gunnie Rose series.
Bye-bye.
Bye all.